These are the Raleigh neighborhoods everyone's moving to and the neighborhoods they're avoiding. So if you're moving to Raleigh, you're choosing your neighborhood based on price alone, you're about to make a very expensive mistake. And I've watched this market for years, and the gap between these areas right now is the widest I've seen in the post-pandemic reset. And by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly which neighborhoods are boiling hot and which neighborhoods will freeze your equity from the day you buy the home. So hot neighborhood number one has to be North Hills. Starting with the hot, newer construction homes, many built from tear-down lots from the older North Hills neighborhoods. You cannot build another North Hills, and there is not another location that matches this total winner. And that's not me selling you, that's just the truth. What makes this spot so different from almost everything else in Raleigh is the convenience to shopping, dining, and it has become the natural spillover from buyers wanting that classic inside the Beltline location but found very little inventory. North Hills sits right off I-440 in Midtown, and over the last 15 years it's completely transformed. And we're talking about Class A office towers, upscale restaurants, great retail, hotels, rooftop bars, outdoor concert space, and it's all tied together in North Hills Midtown. And you know, it's walkable in a way that almost nowhere else in Raleigh really is. Buyers pay for walkability in this market every single time because Raleigh is still mostly a city where you will need a car to exist. And North Hills gives you something that you just can't find anywhere else at this scale. So you can walk to dinner, you can walk to the gym, you can walk to work, you can walk to a movie, walk to the farmer's market on Saturday. This location is night and day compared to most of our suburbs. And the area is hugely popular for the inner city move-up buyers. Around North Hills, you're going to see dual income professionals, corporate executives, empty nesters who are done with the yard work, and a lot of relocation buyers from high-cost cities that love the city vibe. They're used to that urban-suburban mix, and North Hills gives them that same feel, just with a lower tax rate and a lifestyle that's a lot easier to manage. On the Money Talk, Redfin has the median price in the high 600s to the 900s. Condos and townhouses are generally beginning in the 4s. So if you're looking at custom or estate style homes, you're well into the 7 figures. And the price per square foot has been climbing, so which tells you that demand is still there, even in a softer overall market. North Hills sales show steady home value. So when we get to Clayton and the outer North Raleigh later, the contrast tells you almost everything about how this market actually works. Now you need to understand why North Hills tends to stay hot when other areas cool off. The footprint is basically built out. You can't just stretch it further. In this respect, it's very similar to inside the Beltline. And new units that come online are vertical infill, not more sprawl. So supply is tight by nature, and when supply is tight and demand stays steady, home values tend to hold strong. Understanding that protects you from chasing appreciation in places that can't keep building and building with the urban sprawl that seems to have no end. I don't want that for you. So commuting is great here. You're about 10 to 15 minutes to downtown Raleigh. You're roughly 20 to 25 minutes to Research Triangle Park, and about 20 minutes to RDU Airport. That triangle of job access is really hard to beat, and that takes us straight into our next neighborhood, which shares the same irreplaceable location DNA, just with a totally different feel. If you're thinking about a move to Raleigh and you're trying to line up your lifestyle, your commute, your budget, work with relocating buyers every day, and my contact information is in the description below. Seemingly to everyone's surprise, I usually answer the phone. Hot neighborhood number 2 is 5 Points in downtown Raleigh. If you've ever driven through 5 Points and thought they're just not building neighborhoods like this anymore, you're right, they don't. So what I want to talk about the 5 Points in downtown together because they share the same DNA. Inside the Beltline, ITB, is everything inside I-440. And you know it's been the cultural line in Raleigh for as long as I can remember. 5 Points is old Raleigh. Tree-lined streets, character homes from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Little neighborhood corners with local restaurants, wine shops, and even the classic movie theater scene. It has that front porch community feel you just can't recreate in a master plan suburb. Turnover is very slow here, and I mean that in the best way. People move in and they stay here. So when a well-kept home on a quiet street hits the market, buyers have been watching and waiting, and that home does not last long. Most single-family homes run from the high 700s, and renovated or new builds on prime streets can move into the millions. And that's reality, and appreciation is a given in this area. Now, downtown Raleigh is the flip side of that coin, just attracting a different buyer. If 5 Points feels quiet and leafy, downtown is our urban core, and it keeps getting more urban. The warehouse district is one of the most exciting transformations I've seen in years of living here. Old industrial buildings turned into lofts and breweries and galleries and rooftop bars. And according to the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, 2025 had the highest delivery of new residential units ever. Nearly 1,500 homes were gained across 5 projects, and they were absorbed quickly. So demand is keeping up with the supply, and that's really important. So when we get to Garner and the outer North Raleigh, I'm going to show you what happens when inventory rises and there's no strong pull behind it. More on that later. So who's moving in to the 5 Points? Draws families who want historic character and that walk to dinner lifestyle. Downtown brings in young professionals, government employees, and anyone who wants truly car optional living. We're talking about walk scores in the 90s right here in the core of Raleigh, and that's huge if that's how you want to live. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, as I always am, inside the Beltline is not your affordability play. You're paying for location, legacy, and limited supply because you can't create new land inside that loop. And if you're buying for long-term value and you want what feels like Raleigh at its best, inside the Beltline delivers in every possible way. So next, let's head west to a neighborhood with a completely different profile that's been just as strong on demand and value. Hot neighborhood number 3 is West Cary. So here's a number that really tells a story about West Cary: 15 to 25 minutes. That's the typical drive to Research Triangle Park from most of this area, and for a lot of buyers, you know, that one fact decides everything. So West Cary runs along I-40 and North Carolina 540, and that puts it right in one of the best commuter sweet spots in the triangle. Most of the homes were built after 2000, so you're seeing master planned communities, community pools, greenways, pocket parks, and modern open floor plans that home buyers really want these days. RDU Airport is close. Downtown Raleigh is an easy drive, and that connectivity is a big deal. And West Cary also feeds into some of the highest rated public schools in western Wake County. I've watched this play out for decades. And when you combine strong schools with a well-connected location, homeowner demand keeps rising. So even when the broader market softens, West Cary tends to hold its value, and that consistency matters if you're thinking long-term. Realtor.com shows the median price in the mid-500. I think that sounds low for this area, but homes are often selling fast and very close to asking price. Larger, newer single-family homes move up into the 700s and the 800s. And if you're coming from Northern Virginia, the New York area suburbs, Southern California, West Cary can feel like an extraordinary value for what you get. You know, more space, newer construction, and strong schools. That's huge for relocating families. And in West Cary, you can find dual income professional families where both parents are working and school quality is front and center. Also, tech workers and life science professionals tied to the pharmaceutical and the biotech companies around RTP love this area. And relocating families who need commutes that run into 2 different directions at the same time, West Cary just makes that easier. West Cary's newer construction competes in a similar price range to Clayton, but the supply dynamics are completely different. More on Clayton when we get there. But now the honest trade-off is that West Cary is suburban, so you're going to need a car. You're not walking to dinner in the way that you would inside the Beltline. But if schools, the commute, commute and newer homes are your priorities, this is where families keep landing, and for a very good reason. The next neighborhood has been making some of the biggest headlines in Raleigh luxury real estate right now. And that hot neighborhood number 4 is Northridge. Most North Raleigh neighborhoods are sitting on inventory right now. And then there's Northridge, where custom luxury homes in the multi-million-dollar range are moving in days. That's a gap in demand, and it doesn't happen by accident. It was built around a private club with 2 18-hole golf courses, a full clubhouse, tennis, a resort-style pool, and one of the most active social scenes in our city. There are regular events, a real social calendar, and neighbors who actually know each other. It's a true community, not just a zip code. So buyers are coming in, they're buying older homes on prime golf course lots, tearing them down in some cases and building modern luxury estates in their place. And several of those custom builds have sold in the multi-million-dollar range, as high as $7 million, and selling within days of listing. This land is an asset. Golf course frontage, wooded views, mature trees. You can't recreate that in brand new subdivision, and that's exactly why values keep climbing. So if you're under $1 million, there are still entry points in Northridge. You'll find older townhomes and more modest single-family homes that just give you a way in. The price range here is wide, so depending on your budget, your goals, there's often a path, and that flexibility matters. You know, after years of watching this city grow, I don't throw around the word comeback lightly, but when you see 7-figure custom homes absorb that fast, the market is speaking loudly, and smart buyers are the ones who pay attention when it does. So let's flip to the other side of the ledger and look at 2 areas where the story is almost completely the opposite. Cold neighborhood number 1 is far East Raleigh and Knightdale. So take everything that we've talked about in the North Hills area and inside the Beltline, the walkability, the lifestyle anchors, the limited supply, and strip it away. That's essentially the value story for far East Raleigh and Knightdale. And in a market where buyers have options, you know, the difference shows up. So I'm grouping these 2 together because they share the same core challenges. They're driven mostly by price and square footage. So when the price is the main draw, you're more exposed when inventory rises. Knightdale has a medium price range sitting in the mid-300s, and where prices rise a bit, perhaps the high 4s. And stay tuned, because when we get to outer North Raleigh, the townhome numbers there make this look mild, but more on that later. Knightdale is growing, and from numbers standpoint, you can do more space for less money than in Cary or Apex. So there's real value there. But here's the thing. There's no strong lifestyle anchor, no walkability or mixed-use district, no central spot that pulls people in beyond the price point. And when demand is mostly cost-driven, it can spread out quickly to any area that's priced the same, and that makes it harder to stand out. So when it comes to the commute, getting to RTP from the far East Raleigh can run 35 to 45 minutes at peak times using I-40 and I-87. You know, I've worked with buyers from major northeastern cities who don't blink at long commutes. They've done that drive their whole careers, and they're getting a lot more house for the money here. So for them, it makes sense. But most Raleigh buyers are not wired for that kind of commute, and that naturally limits the buyer pool. And Knightdale has a sizable pipeline of approved and in-construction homes coming online. So more of the same product is on the way. So when supply keeps growing and demand is mostly about price, appreciation can become slower and less predictable. You know, I don't want that for you if you're banking on a strong value growth. And that supply story gets even more pronounced in the next market that we're about to cover, and that's cold neighborhood number 2 is Clayton. A large share of listings in Clayton right now are actually new construction, and that fact naturally dampens the appreciation of resale homes. And when that much inventory hits one market at the same time, you know, the leverage shifts towards the buyers pretty fast. Months of the supplies of homes in Clayton are getting close to, and in some cases over, what we call a buyer's market. And in certain price ranges, the existing homes are sitting with very few sales compared to the number of listings. Redfin says Clayton's median sits at low 300s, and that tells me demand isn't keeping up with what's being built. And when you add in roughly 35-mile drive to RTP, which can stretch to 45 minutes or longer in peak traffic, a big portion of buyers just decide it's not worth it. I want to be fair here. There are some genuine good deals in Clayton, North Carolina. And if you're okay with that commute, you can buy a brand new home with modern furnishes at a price that absolutely turns heads in Wake County. So I'm worked with buyers from higher cost northern markets where long drives are just normal and they see real value here, and I completely understand that. When inventory gets this high, appreciation will become a much slower story. So understanding that oversupply protects you from expecting North Hills appreciation because you're in a market that's built in a totally different foundation. I don't want that for you if you consider your home as an asset that appreciates in value. So if you're asking where your dollar is the most likely to work the hardest over time, you have to factor in that supply picture. Clayton has an opportunity, no question, but it also has a headwind. And the next market we're covering deals with a similar pressure, just for a very different reason. Cold neighborhood number 3 is Garner. Garner is the one I always hesitate to put on the list like this because geographically it makes sense. You're about 15 to 20 minutes to downtown Raleigh. It's a first ring suburb. Prices are reasonable on paper. You look at it and you think this should be a no-brainer. Garner never quite got the economic development it needed to become a destination. The industry didn't show up in the way many of us hoped it would. The business base didn't grow the way it did in Cary or Apex. And when that happens, a market ends up competing mostly on price. And price-driven markets are usually the first to feel pressure when inventory rises. Garner's median is a low 400s. And the inventory in Garner jumped significantly over the past year. In some reports, we've seen close to a 75% increase in active listings. Now that's a lot of new supply for a market that doesn't have a strong, clear story that pulls buyers in. So without major job anchors or a lifestyle draw, absorption tends to stay soft even when the prices look attractive. That's just how it plays out. Now, if you find the right house at the right price, it can absolutely work. But you need to understand that you're buying into a market where leverage is shifting towards the buyers, and your home's appreciation is likely to trail other areas with a stronger demand. Understanding that protects you from expecting the wrong outcome. I don't want that for you. Cold neighborhood number 4 is outer North Raleigh. Now, outer North Raleigh is facing its own version of the same pressure. It looks different on the surface, but the underlying dynamic is similar. So with dozens of listings in some outer North Raleigh zip code, that's the market telling you something loud and clear. And keeping in mind that as of January 26, the median price in North Raleigh was around mid-400s. A big wave of townhome construction rolled through the corridors of north of I-540, and the product looks almost the same from one listing to the next. Same builder, same floor plan. These townhomes had the same finishes, same homeowners association amenities, and sometimes even the same street. When buyers can scroll through about 300 versions of basically the same home, there's no urgency. They slow down, compare everything side by side, and they negotiate hard. Sellers lose leverage in that environment, and they're losing on current resale value. And if you're with an agent that doesn't know the stats, you will easily pay too much for your new townhome. Now compare that to North Hills. That's also a condo and a townhouse market, but it's anchored by a real lifestyle district that creates its own demand. Outer North Raleigh doesn't have that kind of differentiation. So you're in the car for just about everything. And when the homes are interchangeable and supply keeps on coming, pricing pressure sticks around, and that's just the math. So who does this actually work for? You're a buyer targeting this corridor. You have the real negotiating power right now. Make sure that your agent knows how to negotiate. You've got choices. You've got time. You can be selective, and that can be a very strong position to be in. So if you're selling here or buying strictly for appreciation, you need to see this clearly. Understanding this oversupply dynamic protects you from one of the most common mistakes I see, assuming demand will magically show up and fix the supply problem. I don't want that for you, because when you call me to sell your home, I want to put extra appreciation in your pocket. So picking the right neighborhood in Raleigh means choosing the one where the trade-offs make sense for you and your lifestyle. If you're trying to sort through which of these areas fits your timeline, your budget, before the market heats up, let's have a real conversation. Shoot me an email at marti@martihampton.com, and I've linked my video on the top 5 neighborhoods in Cary. That's a fantastic next layer to everything that we've just talked about. So thanks for watching. See you next time.